What is the worst way you have ever been woken up? A car accident. I was sleeping in the passenger seat and woke up looking at a shattered windshield and spitting out pieces of my front tooth. My brother had a dream that I beat him up, which jolted him awake. He walked over to my bed at 3 in the morning and punched me in the face. This was when I was much younger. I had to get up for school, and my troll dad was getting tired of telling me to get out of bed every 5 minutes. So he told me he was getting a taser. My sleep mind correctly figured out that he was bullshitting, but didn't realize he was playing mind games. So he turns on his electric razor and touches it to my leg. I go flying, hit my head on the wall and call him things I'd never before said to his face. I love that freaking bastard. I once posted the absolute worst wake up I've had as a creepypasta on Arnolip, but as that's already been posted, I'll share the second worst. One night I dreamed I was standing on the lip of a canyon, and that I jumped down. I woke up really slowly, in waves really, as though I had passed out and was slowly coming to. As I was waking up, I slowly realized that I was on the ground, that there was an intense pain in my mouth, and there was something grainy and sharp caught in my throat. I swallowed and felt several sharp lumps go down my throat. The pain became worse and worse. I spat blood and started screaming. Turns out in my sleep I had jumped off my bed, landed on the floor teeth first, fricked up my neck and swallowed 2 teeth, not to mention teeth shards. That sucked, and that is the story of why I have several false teeth. Crap, I want to hear your worst story. The cat was walking across the bed and stepped on my face near my eye with its back paw. As its paw started to slide down my cheek, it dug in with a claw and cut a long deep gouge in my skin. The scar that formed must have provided a weak point for a wrinkle to form, and I now have one long prominent wrinkle starting at the corner of my eye and running down my cheek. You're a Bond villain now. Get used to it. My sister was trying to be sweet and wake me up with my little nephew. He was only 5 months old at the time. She had just fed him and hovered him over my face while saying, "Wake up, Becca, wake up." I opened my eyes and saw the cutest baby ever, who then proceeded to throw up all over me. It was white, and goopy, and disgusting, dribbling down my neck. Worst ever. He threw up her breast milk. You had your sister's boob juice all over you. You're welcome. I was in bed watching SNL and fell asleep. Shortly thereafter a noise woke me up, but since SNL was still on I figured it was from the TV. Just to be sure, I walked over to my bedroom window and pulled open the drapes to find someone staring in at me. I nearly passed out. Instead of doing the wise thing and calling the cops, I went to Denny's and sipped coffee for several hours like the P I am. I think leaving the house to get into my car would be way more scary than hiding out and calling the cops. Give us some details. Occasionally, maybe once or twice a month, my fiance will have a bad dream, and I will end up getting punched in the face and kicked. She tends to flail her arms and legs when she has a bad dream. Oddly enough, she doesn't really wake up during this, but as soon as I go to get out of the bed, after getting smacked, she inevitably asks me where I am going, and to come back to bed and cuddle. There's such a fine line between cuddling and face punching. It's a toss-up between my sister calling me to tell me my mom had a stroke and my ex-wife waking me up to tell me she wanted a divorce. Ugh. Well, I hope your mom is okay. I was 16 years old and my dad had brain cancer. Through the night his tumors had ruptured and his brain had bled so much that when my sister found him in the morning his eyes had almost popped out of his head and there was blood of course coming out of his mouth, nose, and ears as well. The sheer sight of seeing my dad like that was horrible, but it's the screams from my sister that still stick with me to this day. As soon as I heard her scream I woke up and I immediately knew that my dad had passed. I slowly walked to my father's room and hugged my sister. I dialed 911 and I couldn't say anything. The 911 dispatchers must have heard my sister screaming and traced the call to my address. I just remember sitting at the kneeling by his side and holding his hand thinking, this can't be the end. It just can't. The rest of that entire day and week I seriously can't remember at all. That was the hardest thing I think I've ever typed in my life. My hands won't stop shaking and it's the first time I've cried in a very long time. That must have been really hard. I'm touched that you decided to share it on this thread. There's also off my chest in case you ever want to talk about it more. My wife hovering over me in a suit or armor, helm, sword and all. My buddy came over with his set he uses for whatever it is. They beat up on each other at some contest. She grabbed it and put it on and woke me up. About shutted myself. Your wife sounds awesome. The wife screaming at me, get up, get it. I opened my eyes, and a sparrow flew above my face, followed shortly by the cat jumping over my face chasing the bird. Now that I think about it, that was both part awesome and part annoying. I am used as a ramp frequently during crazy cat times. I used to have a bedroom in the basement at the house I was living at. I woke up to the sound of running water. Thinking it was someone in the shower above me, I went back to sleep. Woke up 5 minutes later to still hearing it. By this time I decided I should just get up. Swung my legs out of bed and they landed in about a foot of freezing cold water. Our basement had started to flood. I had been using my laptop before bed and set it on the floor when just before I went to sleep. Goodbye $600 laptop and cell phone that was charging off of it. Till tables are cheap insurance. 3 guys sexually assaulting me. Woke up to 2 of them holding me down, while another was, busy down below. Only got worse from there. When I read things like this I want to give the OP a hug, but then feel awkward because unwanted contact was what started it all. Then I just feel weird and don't know what to do. So here I am, dreaming that I'm in a not so post-apocalyptic setting. There was a zombie plague, but it had been dealt with and now there was just heightened security in public places because occasionally little hordes would break out or randomly show up. I don't know how I knew this. It's just one of those dream things. Anyway, I was one of these anti-zombie SWAT guys when all of a sudden a crap ton of zombies swarm them all. One of them kills a friend and then several start to mob me. So I brace my shotgun in both hands and body check them. The force of this was so violent that I woke up just in time to see my girlfriend careening across the room. I've been awakened by the following. 1. An earthquake. Twice. 2. Water pouring into my closet from a busted pipe. 3. A wild one. I quickly woke up as I distinctly remembered hearing a woman run by my apartment window, sobbing uncontrollably, get into and start a car, and tear out of the parking lot. I hopped out of bed and quickly put my clothes on, heading towards the door thinking my girlfriend was in trouble and was at my door looking for help. As I slowly realized for that to be true, I would have needed to hear those noises in reverse. I lived in California and have been woken by an earthquake. As long as crap isn't falling down on top of you there is no concern. Just go back to sleep and check out the USGS website in the morning to figure out how big it was. So my sister tried to commit suicide by hanging herself and she was found with severe lack of oxygen to the brain. She had been in ICU for a few weeks without much progress. One night I woke up to my dad quietly coming into my room, sitting on my bed, putting his hand on me and whimpering quietly. He never tried to wake me up, just wanted to be with me. It was that moment that I knew she had died. I had just started dating this girl and it was the first or second time I was spending the night. Around 3 AM she just screams robot chicken and continues sleeping through the night. I nearly fell out of bed, I was so scared. I woke up at 3 AM, looked around my room still half asleep, and hallucinated that a pig was standing up in one of my hoodies, eating a popsicle and waiting to kill me. Oh god. Sounds like the beginning to a Saw movie. I used to live by a river, and one time I was awoken at 4:30 AM. Also BC the river was flooding in March, and when I woke up, the water was already in my house, surrounding my bed and I was sleeping nude. Ugh, I hate wetting the bed. Woke up to a horde of people screaming. I seriously thought I had died and I was falling into the pits of heck. As a teenager some of my youth group, 15 people, quietly snuck into my room, with the help of my parents, and on the count of 3 screamed my name at 6 AM. I awoke with a racing heart in a state of delirium. Worst crap ever. I couldn't go back to sleep BC, the adrenaline was pumping so hard. They filmed it all and showed it to the youth group. Also, my dad stuck peanut butter in my ears once because I wouldn't get out of bed to go to school. I slept through a church when I was 16, so my youth pastor came over to my house to wake up heckle me. He lived nearby, so it was not that weird to hear him downstairs talking to my mom. But then before I know it, he bursting into my room is shoving my mom's 3 chihuahuas under the covers of my bed and sealing up the edges so they could not escape, while simultaneously doing everything in his power to work them up. I was naked as the day I came into this world when all this went down. The 2 AM fire alarms in college to me were always the worst, especially since I had 8 AM classes. I have woken up to trees falling on the roof and the house being on fire. Those both sucked. When I received my first computer, back when having a nice set of speakers and a sub on a PC was new, I decided to test out the alarm application. I set it for early in the morning before school and decided to use the opening theme of Star Wars. Turned the speakers all the way up. Going from dead asleep to wide awake instantly is a horrible feeling. It made my chest hurt for a few minutes. I was at a sleepover where I slept right next to a side table with a huge lamp. In my sleep I managed to knock it over and woke up to it falling on me. Oddly enough, I've been woken up by a friend of mine beating the crap out of a table lamp in his sleep. A group of friends at university couldn't wake me up one day, so resorted to putting a piece of kitchen roll between my toes and set it on fire. I woke up very fast and in a colossal bad mood. Suffice to say, I went somewhat apeshit. I'm a huge MMA fan. When UFC Undisputed 2009 video game came out, I spent a 48-hour stretch playing non-stop trying to get all the achievements. I had plans to meet my wife for dinner on the second day. I ended up crashing on the couch and was sleeping so deeply that I slept through my alarm and about 20 phone calls from my wife. I woke up to her crying hysterically after having come rushing through our front door and shaking me violently to make sure I wasn't dead. Felt like the biggest ong ever. Felt so bad for her, as I can only imagine how worried she was. Took her out to dinner and a movie that night. Everything turned out better than expected. I woke up to my friend shaking me, telling me that 2 friends, one who I'd known since kindergarten and one who was my best friend's little brother, had died in a violent car crash the night before. Half asleep, in complete shock, and still in my pajamas, he drove me to the scene of the car accident. The boys had been hilling and had crashed my childhood friend's little 2-door at 100 miles per hour into the trees at the top of a large hill. The car had been towed, but the place was a mess. Blood on the pavement, bloody gloves, car parts everywhere, and an indescribable smell in the air. When I looked up, I could see bloodstains on the trees 20 feet above the ground. I've never forgiven my friend for pulling me out of bed and taking me to that place. TLDR. I woke up to the news that friends of mine had died, and was promptly driven to the scene of the car wreck in shock. Visiting my grandparents one weekend, my grandfather burst into my room crying and said Mary is dead. I was still mostly asleep, so all I could manage to say was a dazed oh no. Woke up to a smoke-filled room, with a knocked over lamp burning a hole in my carpet, after it had already burned through the sleeping bag I was in. 2 times. Funny, I woke up to people screaming at me in my room with my brother clutching his bloody nose. He tried to wake me up and I had punched him in the face in my sleep. Didn't remember a thing. Scary as frick. I had a little PTSD after too many hallucinogens. So weeks after the episode I woke up with an acquaintance beside me. Then a random person jumped on the bed between us and said hello. Then 2 more people walked into the room behind them and were asking me what was up. Then I turned over and lifted me head up and about 3 people were at the foot of my bed asking me how my day was and if I was okay. Then a friend of mine was picking me up off the bed. I walked down the hall to the bathroom and people started walking out of the rooms and asking me if I was feeling alright. I went to the bathroom and when I sat down I woke up in my bed again. This happened to me about 3 times in a row. Me trying to make it to the bathroom before I woke up and no one was in the room anymore. Then I peed and couldn't fall asleep for hours. Don't do drugs, kids. For myself, I once woke up to the crash of my roommate's pipes he was welding, which were lined up outside my bedroom window, all falling to the ground at once after a gust of wind blew them all down. I woke up to what felt like a heart attack and pure terror. But I think my buddy's GF wins this one. My buddy does not drink whiskey because he always blacks out and pisses himself when he gets drunk off it. One day he got blackout drunk on it and pee himself in his bed. While she was in it with him, she woke up to her clothes and hair soaked in urine. She bought him one of those plastic bed covers later that day. My cousin can fart on command, so while I slept on his sofa, he decided to pull down his underwear, crouch, and fart on my face. It came out as a shot. A couple of years ago, I really pee my mum off. Something about school, I can't even remember anymore, and one day she woke me up by slamming my bedroom door open as loudly as she could. My body actually reacted to the ungodly noise she'd made before I even woke up. I just opened my eyes and found myself in a sitting position, utterly confused and scared shitless. Makes me laugh now. My mom shook me. As I was being stirred awake, I could hear and see that she was crying. As I lay looking at her, I already knew what had happened. Dad killed himself last night. She then held me in her arms. One of only 2 times she has done that since my father died over 20 years ago. I was the lucky one. I didn't have to see it happen like my mom or hear the arguing and eventual gunshot like my sister. It's always nice to share that story. I'll do this with an unnecessary numbered list of events so I don't wind up writing a 10-paragraph story like I do sometimes. 1. 2 AM. Woken up by the sound of people talking. Could have sworn they were walking past my bedroom towards the back of my house where a back door to both my house and the basement are accessible, along with them saying we can get in through the back. 2. People walking down the steps of the basement of my house, and I'm wondering, oh frick, what's going on? 3. The sudden realization that there are flashing lights outside of my house, an ambulance, or police car, or fire truck, I don't know. 4. I want to let the authorities know my wife and I are in here and we may need help if some kind of BS is going down. Realize I shouldn't open the back door and run out in case they are trying to get to a criminal of some sort who may have taken up hiding in my basement. Who wants to get shot anyway? I turn on the light, thinking that would at least lessen the surprises or something, and step out a few moments later, ready to put my hands up if needed. It's an ambulance. 5. I notice after awaking more and the adrenaline wearing out a bit that it was just my neighbor opening the door and going upstairs, talking on his phone. My bedroom is next to the stairwell to his apartment. The sound of stomping around my apartment was nothing more than the usual sounds of him walking around. Totally anticlimactic. 6. I go see what happened with the ambulance. It slowly turns the corner and drove away, which is the only part of the event that I can't explain. Why was an ambulance there? TLDR. Numbers didn't help, only made me seem odd. Firefighter here. In my area, fire calls always get an ambulance dispatched, just in case a firefighter gets injured. Even if there's no smoke fire when we roll up, we still have to go in and look around. A stranger broke in through the window of my living room and came into my room at 3 AM and started talking to me. At first I thought it was my roommate and then I realized it was a stranger. My second and equally terrifying realization was that my 2 other roommates were out and I was alone with him. Sleeping at my aunt's house in Arizona, woke up to the feeling of a tickle on my face. I assumed it was just one of those weird random tickles you get in bed at night, and was about to fall back asleep when I started feeling it again, except it was very strong and very specifically moving down my neck arm. Flipped on the light, it was a huge cockroach. Had a hard time going back to sleep after that. When I was about 10, my friend spent the night and we slept on the floor. We woke up soaked in blood and afterbirth fluids. My cat had given birth to 6 kittens on top of us. I had a dream where my Nintendo DS was taken away. I woke up immediately and started looking for it. After 5 minutes I realized I didn't have a Nintendo DS. When my crazy, black, soon-to-be housemate came into my room shouting about how his webmaster, that he had had a falling out with over non-payment for services rendered, had redirected his rap show website to the Santa Clara County Corrections Department. He was an ex-con, and how I needed to help him get it fixed immediately, and a bunch of assorted jargon being spoken to me at a million miles an hour. Never mind the fact that it's not okay for anyone to come in my room when I am sleeping, whilst being naked under the covers, and still so damned asleep that I can't process what was happening nor understand what's going on. Curse that douchebag. Shaka, when the walls fell. At least you avoided using Zinder. His face black, his eyes red. Well met, sir. The kids across the dorm room hall, pouring a sled full of snow on me at 4 am, then bashing me in the back of the head with said plastic sled. Needless to say they were drunk, my door was unlocked, and they were pissed that I didn't sled with them. So, I'm a light sleeper and I have a fish pond in my backyard with a waterfall. I wake up one night to my waterfall being louder than normal. I'm still groggy and look over to my bedroom door to the backyard and see that it is slightly open. I then realize there is a foot on the step inside the door. I hit the light and go into crazy naked home protector mode. I jump out of bed screaming get the frick out of here, not sure if my boys slapping against my thighs in the soft light of my lamp or my manly voice convinced them to leave. TL. DR. Hear someone coming in my bedroom door and scare them away with my nakedness. I was taking a nap and my bandmates decided that they should go into my freezer and grab one of the frozen bananas I used for muffins. Shut the frick up, I know you love banana chocolate chip muffins. And slowly pull down my pants, lube it up and shove it up my butt. Imagine that. I was like 10. Some guys in bulletproof vests were shaking me and my brother awake. He had a finger over his mouth, shushed us, and explained the situation. Apparently, the neighbor across the street had snapped. He had a bunch of guns on his porch, upstairs, yelling, shotgun in one hand, beer in the other. There were about 4 cop cars in front of his house, and each officer had a gun pointed at the guy. We were told to be as quiet as possible, and jump out the back window into our backyard. Once outside, we had to jump a fence into our next door neighbor's yard. They had a hole in their back fence so we could go around the street safely and wait for the situation to be handled. We waited about a half hour waiting on the street corner when we heard a banging noise and a few gunshots. The cops had come upstairs and shot the guy in the leg. He dropped his gun and his beer and was taken away. We were allowed to go back into our houses. At this point about 3 am. But I asked if I could get a ride around the block in a cop car. I did. It was fun. Mine would have to be having my college roommate running into my room with tears in her eyes and screaming that America was being attacked. Turned on my TV still half asleep just in time to watch the second plane hit the tower. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.